Hello, and we are back with part 2 of this week's comic book reviews. In the first part, I covered the Marvel books I picked up this week, as long as The Wicked and the Divine, issue 17. And in this part, we're going to review the DC books, but before that, we are going to start with Clean Room, issue number 3. Really been liking this book so far. Gail Simone's just been upping her crazy every issue, well, the past 2 issues, getting really creepy, crazy, scary, there's like chills down the back of your spine sort of content, and it's, par for the course, issue number 3. Astrid and Chloe split up, go their own ways, while Astrid goes home, Chloe goes home, and Astrid goes back into the clean room to deal with a very special subject, a man who believes that heaven is underground and so refuses to walk lest he step on the angels. While Astrid is dealing with this, somebody is breaking into Chloe's home, and ends up attacking the neighbors. And this person is like a goblin-y character, very where is it? He's a goblin-y fellow. Here you go. Here's where he just like pops up. He reminds me of like a Spring-Heeled Jack sort of guy, especially because he's leaping in this picture, and he has like a good. Here it is. Kind of looks like the Joker. But this mysterious guy invaded Chloe's home and checked her voicemail for her, which is rude because, now she doesn't know she has any new voicemail because the light won't be blinking anymore. Meanwhile, on her way home, Chloe gets stuck at a gas station when her card gets rejected, and the guy manning the pump is like, hey, I'm going to beat you up for some reason. Seems a bit of an overreaction, but luckily she is saved by Killian, Astrid's bodyguard, who seemed to be following her all the way home. So we find out, as the rest of this book goes on, we find out why Killian has been following Chloe. We don't find out much more about the goblin guy who attacked, to be completely honest. But we also find out why Astrid has taken such a special interest in the guy who doesn't walk. And yeah, it just keeps on getting creepier. The webs of intrigue keep on getting webbier and stickier. You want to know, I want to know, reading this, what exactly is special about Chloe? We know that she sees those pink demon-y things. Does Astrid know that? Like, how deep did Astrid get? How interested is Astrid in Chloe, or is Killian working more of her own accord for some reason? And then, what is Astrid's deal with the clean room and all that? Just keeps on getting more and more intriguing. So, if you're a fan of spooky things that go bump in the night and gobbly dudes who check your voicemail, then the clean room is right up your alley. Next up, starting with the DC books and continuing with Gail Simone, is, of course, Secret Six, issue number 9, upside down. That's kind of embarrassing. Where are we? That's right. So Black Alice is still the cause of magic being drained in the world. And we get a little catch-up of that story in the beginning there. As Zatanna says that she's going to try and do something about it. And then we catch up with the group, with the Secret Six, underwater by Atlantis as they try to destroy their first pillar in order to save Black Alice. We're introduced to this by Ferdy, who seems to now be aware of the fourth wall and is talking to the audience directly, much to the ventriloquist's confusion. And of course, we catch up with Catman in the middle of a fight with Aquaman, while the rest of the team tries their best to destroy the pillar. And then once they do, they have to deal with the consequences of one of the elder gods stirring from its slumber, so to speak. Then the rest of the book deals with the fallout of that, as Zatanna starts to attack Black Alice and her keepers, Scandal and the Ventriloquist, directly using magic by summoning these lion, bird, griffin things to attack, while the rest of the team dresses up in fancy prom costume to go after the second pillar and run into some more trouble as other magic users try and stop them from awakening the Elder Gods and draining magic from the world. So keeping on track again with Secret Six, you have the humor. I think that one page is all that's necessary, really, of just Strix and the rest of the gang in fancy dress. That's the most outright humor we get in this book. Strix, of course, is wearing a tutu. I like how you have Catman going the Fabio route. Etrigan in a tux. So, yeah, I mean, it's still good stuff. Humor, a lot of heart as we learn more about characters and what they have at stake past, just wanting to kill people, I guess. We learn that Scandal has a bit of a family. There's a growing relationship between Porcelain and another member of the team. So, all good stuff, all kind of, again, par for the course with what you're used to reading Secret Six. Next up is The Martian Manhunter, issue 7. Now, I've made some comparisons of earlier issues to this book to Neil Gaiman's Sandman, just in terms of how the story is being told, how mental it can get, how, within certain characters' heads the story gets. And this book continues that, and also one of the more confusing aspects of not knowing what's kind of going on, which characters, who or how many characters they happen to be. So in the last issue, the Martian Manhunter accidentally, or maybe purposely, brought back Mars, and not all of him is entirely pleased with that decision. So parts of the Martian Manhunter are fighting other parts of the Martian Manhunter, while still further parts are still kind of getting over the fact that they're all a single Martian. And of course, while they infight, Mars is alive and Earth is dead, which means that Martians are alive and still waiting. They launch an attack on the rest of the of the Martian parts. I don't know why Silver Surfer came to mind. But yeah, it's kind of hard to follow exactly what's going on in this book, just because you have so many characters that are John Jones, and all they all kind of look the same. Again, kind of hard to distinguish which one is Pearl here and which one is a different part of the Martian Manhunter. That seems to be a completely new part, because it's also not any of the parts that we saw before. So just kind of confusing following which characters are doing which things. But overall, we are moving the plot ahead. We discover that Mars was brought back, but not completely, and so Earth was not completely destroyed. We get a return from a character we haven't seen in a couple issues, be it after some kind of a time-skippy thing happened, which means that as well as kind of traveling in space, they might have also traveled in time. Again, it's just kind of confusing, this issue overall. But yeah, the main, I guess, concern here is what side is the Martian Manhunter on at this point? Because part of him wanted to revive Mars, other parts of him didn't want to revive Mars. They all seem to have agency as their own characters instead of just fighting over what all of the Manhunters should do. And we're seeing the consequences. Basically, this is just laying out the consequences of what happened in the previous issue. So, kind of a weak issue, kind of too confusing for its own good, but still have enough goodwill built towards it from the previous 6 issues to not drop this one immediately. Moving right along to Justice League, The Dark Side of War, Part 6. The first issue coming out after all of the tie-ins to Justice League came out, all of the ones exploring each Justice League member as a god, exploring their new god powers. And so appropriately enough, first of all, great cover by, I think it's Francis Manipal is his name, and just he does amazing work. I'm loving his covers, his interiors, the whole thing is just brilliant. It really is. It is Francis. This person's name is Francis. I was correct about that. So we begin this issue with kind of the fallout of, again, all the Justice League characters becoming gods, with Wonder Woman continuing to do the overall narration, being that she was a god before all of this started. And with her and the remaining Justice League members, plus Scott Free and another character we'll find out about a bit later on in this issue, fight the rest of Darkseid's forces after Darkseid, of course, is killed by Anti-Monitor. So we have Wonder Woman versus Calabac, we have Power Ring versus, I forget this person's name, but she's one of Darkseid's Furies, I presume. We have Scott versus his previous Warden, and then out of nowhere to save the day and just be completely awesome doing it is Big Barda, who finally shows up, I think, in the New 52 for the first time, comes out of a boom tube in order to save Scott, who is still her husband, which is great that they're still married and in a very committed relationship, it seems, committed to kicking ass. It really is great to see that, like, this character is back, and this character is still Big Barda. They're still in the relationship with Scott, still just kicks tons of ass, and is fighting the good fight, has defected from Darkseid. We don't have to see all that happen again. So yeah, having Big Barda back and having just this panel is just amazing. I just love it. This issue is just for that panel, I think like this issue leaves me at a good place. We then catch up with some of the lesser characters in this book. Metron, who is lost in the Rock of Ages, not the Rock of Ages, the Rock of Eternity, and Grail still looking over the battle, waiting for the Anti-Monitor's next move. And so after that small battle with the rest of Darkseid's forces, we have the team deciding on their next move, figuring out some people who know about the Anti-Monitor that they might be able to consult in order to find a weakness or plan a strategy. And the team is still not fully together. The Justice League are still battling their own internal demons, although one of them does show up to give Wonder Woman some trouble at the end of this book. I'm still really liking Darkseid War. It is still finding ways to escalate and escalate and escalate. And just, again, Big Barda is in this issue, and Big Barda does not at all feel like a downgrade from like Anti-Monitor or not, any of that. They make her feel just as important as any of these other characters coming back. They show why she's a force of nature, and again, it's great. Like somewhere in DC, it seems like Jeff Johns is like, maybe we should continue what we were doing before this whole New 52 stuff, and bringing it just back, keeping all that momentum they had with like the previous pre-New 52 stuff, and I just couldn't be more excited to see how this arc turns out. Next up, we have the continuation of Robin War with We Are Robin issue number 7. That starts off with a really cool thing that we haven't had in a while. Batman and Robin back together. I mean, it's Jim Gordon and Dick Grayson, but still a Batman and Robin team that, has known each other for years. Gordon, of course, knowing Dick when he was just Robin. And we get them kind of explore that earlier relationship, with Gordon telling Dick how uncomfortable it made him feel at first that Batman was recruiting a teenager, and how he kind of bent his own moral compass around the idea that Batman is doing this and that Robin is existing. And while they go research Councilwoman Noctua's office, the rest of the Robins plan an escape from their cage. And it's quite a good escape. Throughout this whole scene, we get Duke Thomas kind of narrating his inner monologue, which he addresses to his parents in the same way that Dick addresses his own monologue to to Dick's to his parents in the first page of this. But the rest of this book is pretty much the rest of the Robins in the cage after Jason and Tim have been captured by the Court of Owls, and the rest of the team engineering the escape after the Court of Owls orders that Tim and Jason fight to the death in order to spare the other Robins. So, the story is still racing ahead. In this book, what I like is that we don't stall with the Robins in a cage, which felt like a big problem of the previous issue, the Detective Comics tie-in. It felt like the characters were just in a cage, not doing anything for pretty much the entirety of the issue. While in this issue, everyone does something. You have Gordon and Dick investigating Noctua and learning more about her involvement in this whole thing. We have the Robins actually planning and getting steps ahead in their escape and figuring out what they're going to do now that they know the Court of Owls involved. Are the Robins going to start working together as like an army, or just let the real Robins take control and while the others kind of fall back and let them do what they do. And we get again more character development. We see especially Duke Thomas becoming a more Robin and watching the other Robins and seeing, well, maybe like having a little crisis of character, thinking, well, I can't do that. Like, I'm not that skilled. I couldn't plan what these other Robins are planning without even talking to each other. But at the same time, he's still determined. He's like, this is what I want to do. And that's what he says to his parents. Like, if I don't, this is a crazy world, and so either get crazy with it or leave some other way. And it's called Robin War. Of course, we're getting a lot of Robin action. As someone who likes the Robins, I'm enjoying that, especially seeing how they all play off each other, and then like seeing the real Robins kind of teach the younger, like the mass Robins, the Robin populi, how it's really done. Again, not as good as the Grayson issue, which was fantastic, which was spectacular, but really moving the story ahead, getting to see all the characters do something and be active and have their own agency instead of just kind of waiting for the story to happen to them, which is like just good. I enjoyed this issue a lot more than I enjoyed Detective Comics. And moving on from just Robins to Batman and Robin Eternal, number 11 is what we're at. Again, want to mention the cover, which is fantastically psychedelic. I really like psychedelic, just art in general, and this is a pretty good example for like a Batman comic book that isn't like Neil Adams just going crazy with Batman Odyssey. Catching up the story here with Dick Grayson and Harper Row confronting the sculptor, the woman who actually raises the children for Mother, as she seems to be going against Mother. Mother's stolen her children and she wants revenge, so she decides to teach Dick and Harper how she makes the children and what Mother's entire shtick really is, which means that we get a lot of backstory of this new Cassandra Cain, who, like in the pre-52, was raised by David Cain. I wanted to say Dean Cain so badly. He's raised by David Cain, who refuses to let Cassandra talk, so that Cassandra learns to kind of communicate only through body language, making her the world's greatest assassin, very similar to her post-crisis origin. And then we basically get her whole backstory, and it's kind of similar. I mean, they involve like Mother more and more like, but it's still the same: seclusion, never learning how to talk, being raised by her assassin father in order to be the best assassin in the world. Kind of a retread of that story if you're familiar with it, and if it's not, it's still a pretty damn good origin story for what is essentially the same. They're keeping, again, like Big Barda, they're keeping Cassandra very close to her original incarnation, which, again, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And then at the very end, they have a cliffhanger involving Batman's interaction with Mother all those years ago, and hinting, that maybe Batman had more involvement with Mother than he first let on. Could be a fake, that's what I'm expecting, it's just part of Batman's plans on plans on plans that Batman tends to have. But still, dramatic, building the tension. Was Batman in league with Mother? Did Batman use Mother to create a Robin? Just building that intent. But the bulk of this issue is Cassandra Cain's origin and backstory, how she was raised to be the kick-ass assassin, fighter, ninja person that we know and love in the book. So that is Batman and Robin Eternal. Not a great issue for moving the story forward, but interesting enough if you want some, again, backstory, and there's still a little narrative thrust at the very end to keep people guessing, well, what's really going on here. And the art is, again, fantastic. Just wanted to kind of point that out again. Just really, really enjoying the art in this book as well. Only 2 more books to go. Not starting with, but continuing with Batman Europa #2. And this book, kind of like the last issue, tends to be definitely more of a feast for the eyes than for the narrative center of the brain, I guess, whatever that may be. So we open with Batman in Prague being attacked by this fire robot thingy. And then the rest of the issue, we start in medias res, so then the rest of the issue tells us how Batman came to begin fighting this giant fire robot thingy. And as I said, this is an art book. The story is meh, the writing could be better. A lot of this is Batman's inner monologue as he goes through the history of Prague and his own thoughts about it. And Batman has a very purple inner monologue, very purple prose, describes Prague very poetically. Continuing again from last issue, we have the Batman and the Joker working together in order to cure the disease that they both have. They're also working with this third person, Nina, who they're currently using as bait in order to lure out the Trojan horse, who gave Batman and the Joker the virus. And they believe to be in Prague. He takes the bait, but does so not directly, and instead in the form of a wooden robot army that Batman and Joker have to fight in sync with each other. And Joker kicks a lot of ass. That's something we get to see Batman kind of react to, is how fast and how effective Joker is at taking out these robots. And he's a little scared. He's like, watch out for the people. He's trying to keep Joker under control, but he's a surprisingly effective teammate, which it surprises me and Batman himself. He's like, well, Joker's good. He's an asset, maybe even. And then we get a little more detail into the actual villain's side of things. And what's cool is that they tell the villain side of the story from the second person, so we never see who the mastermind is. We just see how he works with his partner in a kind of predictably villain fashion. Not a lot of big twists going around there. And eventually we get the big kind of set piece fight between Batman, the Joker, and the flaming robot thing. Again, this, I think this is the fourth or third time I'm saying it, this is a book about the art, and it looks great. I said this in the last issue, I'm going to say it again now. Even if you're sick of Jim Lee's art, if you're just tired of his line work, you think he's overplayed or whatever, the coloring in this book, the actual, the inking, the colors and all that, really give it a fresh new look that it hasn't had ever before. And you could be mistaken in thinking that Jim Lee didn't even draw this. It does not look like your usual Jim Lee work. And it continues to look incredible. This is just an incredible looking Batman book, even if the story isn't up to narrative expectations. It looks good. The story is effective enough to keep you watching or to keep you looking at these just great images. It doesn't feel like something like, again, Batman Odyssey, where the art was fantastic, but the story was too silly, was too disengaging. The story is just good enough to keep you engaged in the art, and the art is good enough to sell you on this book. Or at least, in my opinion, it should be. Not to say the narrative is bad, there's some really good jokes at the end, actually. It's some just really good Batman-Joker interaction that I don't want to spoil because you really, like... It, like, Joker drops a couple references that actually made me laugh out loud. The last page of this book is legitimately some of the funniest thing. Like, just one of the funniest pages in recent memory in comic books for me. Because it feels like a natural interaction between Batman and Joker. At the same time, it's like it's also something like your punny friend might say to you in that situation. And that's a treat, is watching Batman and Joker play off each other, which is kind of a rare thing, especially playing off of each other on the same side towards a common goal instead of towards each other. And so I'm just enjoying Europa. Again, not the best Batman story, not a really thorough detective story, not a great action story, but you get enough action, you get really well-drawn pages, and you get handy enough dialogue and narration that you don't feel like it would be better without the text, which is, something that you can say for like Godzilla in Hell, which didn't really need text at all, but was still really pretty to look at. The text still helps. It's still good, and the art, but you're here, what sells you is the art, and the art, I think, is fantastic. And the next and last DC and comic book I read this week, one I was looking forward to a lot after the first issue, is Max Landis's Superman American Alien issue number 2. First issue of this started with Child Clark, little, I think it was 8-year-old Clark, who's just learning how to fly, and we see how the city how Smallville kind of, now riles around this kid and wants to protect him, knows he's something special, and has, just has that really small town charm. And in this issue, we're dealing with a teenage Clark, a lot older, a bit angstier, and kind of a typical teenage boy in a way that you might not expect Superman to be. In that he has a couple friends he drives around with, he goes out behind this, I guess, place where you're not supposed to be. There's no trespassing, and he has some beer with his friends, and his friends know he has powers, and his friends ask, dude, you ever use X-ray vision to, like, look at people's boobs? And Clark is like, yeah, of course, because he's a horny teenage boy. But of course he's still, like, really likable. He says, actually, like, I used to, but I don't anymore because, like, not because I'm in a goody two-shoes, just people look weird because the clothes, like, make them all weird looking. Anyway, like, this is, like, it's just, Max Landis really gets Clark Kent, I feel. He gets that, yes, Clark Kent is this god-like super being, and he's infinitely good, and has a, moral compass as solid as gold and all that, but that he's also inextricable, like, he's human. He is unalienably human, and he has those human desires. He has a libido. He has, urges. A lot of the urges are to do the right thing, but he's still human. He has emotions, and he has friends, and he has relationships and all that. But aside from just seeing teenage Clark be a kind of a typical American teenager, or like stereotypical American teenager, we also see him presumably stop his first crime. This kid has come back to Smallville, this farmer's son, and is holding his family hostage after robbing and murdering people at a convenience store. So this kid's very bad news. And Clark goes to rescue the family that he's holding hostage. And this villain, again, single-issue villain, but Max Landis is touching on something like really deep to the Superman mythos, is that you have Smallville, which, of course, is this like all-American, good old boy town, super, baseball, mama's apple pie, America, kind of nothing bad happens here, and we have this terrible thing happen there. And then, like, the guy, the prodigal son, I think is the term, as he's returning, he's giving this, like, really angsty speech to his parents, and he says, you thought you could just kick me out and that would be it? Kick me out of your perfect little life? Well, I'm back, and I brought the real world with me. You think I'm just some thing you can throw it in the trash? And he's like, I'm bringing the real world, and the real world isn't this quaint little small-town America. And then you have Clark Kent, Superman, this small town American boy who like becomes the superhero stop this. And it's not about stopping reality. It's not about ignoring the real world as we see, because Clark's first attempt at superheroics is a bit of a mess and he ends up really hurting people. But we see that urge, that the beginning of that part of Clark Kent in this really quick battle here that is standing up for what's right, even if he doesn't know how yet. Even if it's still a mess, he still has that urge, again, which relates again to like the libido thing that we see earlier in the issue, is that he has urges to do things, to help people, to be a good person, even if he has no idea exactly what that means yet. Even if he's still growing into that role of Superman. We see that here, where he's getting in the middle of this really dangerous situation. He's still not entirely sure of his entire powers and abilities, but he stands in harm's way. He tries to do the right thing. And at the very end, after this all happens, we have an incredibly touching scene between Clark and his mom, between Clark and Martha Kent, where we see his mother. And it's totally the opposite of what's happening in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, because the Clarks in the Kents, my bad, in Batman v Superman are awful, because they're like, you don't owe humanity anything, and, they treat you like crap, and you don't have to be good to them. And Martha says to Superman, like, this same sort of thing, like, I don't know what you should be doing, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing nothing. If you want to rescue these people, do that, because you have that power. Just be better at, be more responsible, learn how to use your powers correctly. You can see this woman, who in the first issue was very unsure about raising this child. You can see this woman become the mom who raises Superman, in that she's dealing with all the things at the same time Clark is, from a different perspective. She's not the one with superpowers, but she realizes she has to raise this kid to be a good person because he has all this power. And he's obviously going to get in trouble because of this, so it's good that, it's her job to make sure that he gets in the right kind of trouble and uses his powers responsibly and in the right way. And continues reassuring, like, I love you no matter what you do, because she's a good mom, but, also you're Superman, and you gotta be there for people. It's like this last interaction here between them is just really great. Clark is still bandaged up from the fight, and he goes back to Martha, and Martha's like, why did you do this? That was really dangerous of you. And Clark says, I'll never do anything like that again, I swear. And then Martha just leans in, and Clark is, what? I had a whole speech, and Martha said I had a whole speech planned out. I was going to get into it with you, but I already put my foot in my mouth, because now I can't stop thinking about what would have happened to that family if you hadn't been there. And so they had this really touching moment where Martha's scared for her son, but also realizes that if Clark didn't intervene, things could have been a lot worse. This, again, Max Landis just has a great understanding of the Superman character, and he's like kind of not backpedaling, but he's retroactively thinking, well, this is who Superman is, right? We know he's the Boy Scout, he's this god, he was raised on a farm in the middle of America. How did that person become Superman? And he's thinking, well, this is what his mom would have to be like. This was what his town must be like. This is his interactions with his friends and all that. And it's just amazing. It is like, I don't know if it's really showing up on camera because I'm wearing glasses and all that, but I reading this book, talking about this book, kind of makes me tear up, because I'm someone who loves Superman, and seeing that character, that mythos kind of get, like, it doesn't even feel like he's writing anything new. It feels like a retread almost, because it fits so well. And to just read a book where someone understands Superman, who is an incredibly, like, personally important character to me, like, just seeing that and, like, being like, yes, this makes so much sense. This is who that character is. It's deep. Like, it actually is really affecting to me. And if you love Superman a fraction as much as I do, if you just want a really good superhero story that kind of tells an origin story in more detail and different ways, in kind of a deeper cut sort of way than I think has ever been written before, then like I totally recommend Superman American Alien, one of the best books being published right now, especially one of the best superhero books being published right now. Tons of heart. I really just, I think everyone who likes superheroes, who likes comics, should pick this up. It's just an amazing look at Superman, who is our most important superhero. And that is it for this week's reviews. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, rate it, subscribe, all that stuff. Any comments, questions, book recommendations, thoughts on Superman, or whatever, leave them down below. If you're interested, again, in Marvel books I picked up this week, that is in part 1, so go ahead and watch that. Or don't if you're not interested. Either way, thanks for watching, and I do hope that you will join me for some more comic book reviews.